first time. Yes. So without further ado, I will introduce Frances Cole Jones, who I call a friend as well as
I'm so glad.
Speaker. She's the author of The Wow Factor and How to Wow, if you haven't already read that one. So, Frances.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Oh. So the first statistic I give everybody comes from a study they did at UCLA. There are 3 components to your message: verbal, vocal, and visual. What would you guess is the percentage that people remember of the actual words that you say? Any guess? 8%. 7%. 38% of your impact comes from your tonal quality, so what your voice is doing while you're speaking, and 55% of your impact comes from what your body's doing while you're talking. So my whole job, what I work on with clients, what I'm going to talk about tonight is, okay, how do you make the 7%, the words that you say, as memorable as possible? And then how do you organize your voice and your body so that nothing about them detracts from what you're trying to accomplish? So the 7%, the words that you say. Yale University did a study of the 12 most persuasive words in the English language. What they discovered is that the most persuasive word in the English language is you. So the more that you can, as you're talking to people, like, as I'm sure you know, and as I'm sure you've heard, and when I was thinking about talking to you today, and it's you, and it's you, and it makes sense. Because, you know, we're all the hero or heroine of our own life. We're moving through the day, and when someone acknowledges that, oh, they're as interested in me as I am, we find them fascinating. So it's really beginning to drop you into your conversation as much as you possibly can. Another statistic that's helpful to have comes from a social psychologist in California. Her name is Ellen Langer. And she did a study that discovered that there's one word in the English language that increases the possibility of cooperation from 60 to 94%. Are there any guesses about what that might be? Any guesses at all?
Please.
No.
Money?
It's actually because. I wanted to talk to you today because. And again, we're so clear on the because behind why we want something done or why we're asking somebody to do something or whatever it might be that we forget to articulate that for other people. But until you do that, you know, they don't care. So you really need to make sure, you know, you'll see this when you need to motivate your team under a deadline. If you just say redo the PowerPoint because I said so, that never works with your kids, and believe me, it doesn't work at the office, all right? Same thing. If you're moving through your day and someone tries to cut the line at the grocery store, you know you're pissed. But if they turn to you and they say, do you mind if I cut the line because I'm late to pick up my kids at school? You're like, great, go ahead of me, yay. So it's just really making sure that that's given when you're talking to people. The third thing I want you to remember, and this is essentially the formula for making anybody do what you want them to do anytime, comes from the Duncan Hines cake mix marketing theory. Have any of you bumped into this one? All right, when Duncan Hines first started making cake mix, the decision to have you at home add the egg was made in the marketing department. Because what they've discovered is when we add the egg, we're like, oh, I baked, right? I contributed to the success of the cake. And that's why they make you do it. We have the technology, right? There is powdered egg. But you know when you get the mixes without the egg, they feel weird. And this is why. It's completely your brain. They know this. Okay, so now you're meeting with people. How do you take this out into the world? Whenever you're meeting with anybody, you need to find, okay, what's the egg? What are they going to contribute to what you want so that your success becomes their success as well? And I'll tell you a story to make my point. Studies show that people remember stories longer, trust them more, and repeat them more accurately. So I was working with an actress who was getting ready to go in for a big movie role. And I was like, I said to her, why do you want to play this part? She said, I love this part, and I feel like I was born to play this part. And I thought, oh, dear me. And so the role was of a very, very strong female character. And so I said, okay, well, let's look at the resume of the gentleman you're meeting with. And it turned out that he had been the producer of Kramer versus Kramer and Fatal Attraction. Okay, these are huge female roles. These are iconic, game-changing female roles. So she was able to go into her meeting with him and say, I was so excited when I found out it was you because you were the person who created these iconic female characters, blah, 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 blah. He was so happy. He felt so special, right? That was his egg. That's what he was contributing to this particular project. So again, anytime you're going into a meeting, If you're pitching an idea, if it's a job interview, anything, you're talking to your boss about a raise, you need to find their egg. Where does your success intersect with their success? One other thing to think about when you're beginning to put together the words you're going to say is I want you to stay away from what's known in my business as useless modifiers. It's great, it's amazing, it's incredible, it's so cool. I don't know what you're talking about, right? We all saw this recently at the Oscars. Oh my God, the cast was amazing, and the crew was amazing, and the director was amazing, and I wanted to kill myself, right? It's not amazing until you tell me why. So you have to have a very short story for anything you're going to be speaking about. Do you have a very tiny story about your product? Do you have a very tiny story about yourself? Again, if you're in a job interview and someone says to you, what's your greatest strength? And you're like, oh, I'm an amazing leader. I'm just a really great leader. I really love to lead. And I want to hang myself, right? So one time when I led a team, then this is what happened. Oh, that's memorable. Tell me about your product. Oh, it's just really, you see this all the time with morning TV. If someone hasn't been coached, you can always tell who's been coached on morning TV. Because they're the people who come on and they're able to say, I want you to use this product because this is what's going to happen to you when you do, right? That's the egg. So just have that very small story. I give this example a lot, but I loved it. I was watching Good Morning America, and they had this guy who was on talking about the best new minivans. And he said, this new minivan is so big, I can drive 6 kids to soccer practice, pick up lumber, and build a tree house this afternoon. Like, I dig it. Like, I got how big the van was, right? Doesn't need to be long, but it needs to be evocative. So that's 7%. Those are the words that you say. Any questions about that? Any of those things? And we'll circle back to answers to unpleasant questions. I do hostile Q&A prep, and it's fun. All right. So 38% of your impact comes from your tonal quality, so what your voice is doing while you're speaking. And this is as small as if you're going to say, I'm so happy to be here today, you need to actually sound happy, right? And you all know you bumped into these people, you'll meet them at a party, like, oh, no, I'm really happy to meet you. No. Or, speakers get up and say, I'm really happy to be here tonight. No. I was on the phone with someone the other day where he was calling about working with me, and I said, how are you today? He said, I'm great. And I thought, yeah, and already I know what we're going to be working on in session 1. Because the tone is not working. So you really need to make sure your tone matches what you're doing. The other place I see this go awry quite a bit is on people's voicemail greetings. I don't know about you, but I hear a lot of bad voicemail greeting. People sound exhausted. They sound drunk. They sound overly flirtatious. They sound like they got in the car and they rolled all the windows down, and it seemed like a really, really good time to record their voicemail. Don't do that. Or the one I hate the most, actually, is the one where you sound really, really busy. I can barely be bothered to leave this message. That doesn't make me think you're really, really busy. It makes me think you're kind of nuts and out of control. So you really need to, when you're recording that, and it might take you 10 or 15 tries. That's fine, as long as it takes. You want to inhale, then hit record, and then speak on an exhalation. Because a lot of people do, hi, right? That makes me nuts. I haven't even listened to the whole message, and I'm already a little tiny bit crazy. I want you to stand while you're recording. Standing automatically gives your voice more resonance and authority. I want you to say your name slowly. I dig that it's your name and you know how to pronounce it. I don't, right? So you really need to make sure that that's articulated. If you leave me an alternate number, don't leave it so fast I have to call your machine 6 times to get it. Again, now I'm angry and we haven't even met. All of these things begin to matter. But again, speaking of tonal quality very particularly, I was working with a client and he said, well, let's listen to my voicemail greeting. So, okay. And he said, hey, this is so-and-so, and I am sorry I missed your call. I was like, sweetie, you can't sound like you're at Disney World, right? You have to sound sad. I'm so sorry I missed your call. I want regret, And this is the same thing, if you go to your friend's house and they have like a horrible little dog that's jumping all over you, and your friend's like, oh, you're such a bad dog, you're the worst dog, and the dog's not getting it, right? I can make the dog stop doing what it's doing. Or you leave in the morning and your spouse, your partner's like, no, I love you too, honey. Doesn't matter. It does not matter that they said it. They did not say it the way you wanted it to be said. So that's 38% of your impact. The other thing to think about, and this is more something I work with my female clients, with my male clients, is the importance of speaking from your diaphragm and speaking from down here. Because when you do, you have a nice authoritative voice. When I don't, let me see. If I'm not speaking from my diaphragm, I'm speaking from up here. I have no authority right now. It's really hard to get oxygen. You know, and I work very often with people who are nervous about speaking in public. And I'll say, well, what happened? And they say, well, you know, I got very short of breath, and then I got really sweaty, and then I couldn't. Okay, well, seriously, you just really weren't getting enough air. So it's, you know, it's as simple as that. Keep your hands on your abdomen. If your hands aren't moving when you're speaking, your diaphragm is not engaged. If your diaphragm is not engaged, then you're not speaking from it. So it's really about getting your voice down into its lowest possible register. Okay. Any questions about that? That's your 38%, your tonal quality. No. 55% of your impact comes from what your body is doing while you're speaking. It's one of the reasons why I'm standing here right now talking to you instead of standing over here. This is not as interesting. I'm just not. The more we can see of you, the more we trust you. And I do understand I do this for a living. I'm very comfortable speaking in front of a large group of people. But if you possibly can, if you need a podium, you can put your notes on the podium and you can stand next to it. And you can do this whole kind of thing. Because nobody cares if you look at your note and you come back to me and I'm talking and I'm checking. If you really need to be behind the podium, you know, I've got a couple of requests. I don't want the death grip. You know, there's this one where people lean on it like this. That makes me tense. And then if you can, possibly come out from behind it during question and answer. There's nothing that's going to save you at that point. So you might as well be super likable, right? Some of the other things I work with people on are sitting in a chair. And people always are amazed that I get paid to teach people how to sit in a chair. But there you go. We all make living different ways. I'll tell a story to make my point. So I got a call from one of the movie magazines, and they have one of the movie guys who writes reviews, and they said to me, you know, can you come in and take a look at him, because, you know, he's very tall and he's very handsome and he's so smart, blah, 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 and he's always getting taped by Entertainment Tonight and Access Hollywood, but they never use the tape and we don't know why. So, yeah, because what's more fun than that? Not much. So he walks in and he's very tall and he's very handsome and he sits down in the chair and he goes, well, and I'm like, my work here is done, right? Because nobody wants to listen to Mr. Too Cool for School. Okay, if I were talking to you like this, how irritated would you be? Extremely, right? So it really, you need to be up and you need to be forward and you need to be excited to be somewhere. And this doesn't mean you're sitting in a meeting. And even there's a big difference. You're going to hear the mic again. But, you know, there's a big difference even between my sitting like this and my sitting here. It's an enormous commitment to get up off the back of the chair. And I'm sure you'll actually notice it now in meetings. Because, I mean, half the time you'll be sitting around a meeting, like, at least for me, I look around the meeting, I'm like, so-and-so really needs to organize their body, right? Because, you know, all kinds of weird stuff starts to happen in meetings. You know, we get this whole thing going on, right? This one, that's my fave. You know, or and then some people get very small. Don't do that. I need you right about here. The other thing that's important to know is we trust you when we can see your hands, and we don't trust you when we can't. It's one of the reasons why one of the first things you say to an alleged criminal is hands up. It's true. It is that simple. You know, it's a cellular thing. And I used to do, when there were a lot of IPO roadshows, I did a lot of work in that arena. When you're asking people for $100 million or $1 billion, let's look trustworthy, people. Hands on the table. Everybody, all the time. So, some of the other things to think about with physicality, this is neutral right here, which is just standing and not fidgeting. It's hard to do, right? You'll notice, because then people start to default to here, then this starts to happen, there's this one, then people think they're faking me out, they go here, no, that doesn't help, right? So it's really just about being able to stand and not fidget like this. So uncomfortable. There are a couple of people who do it extremely well. I don't know, did any of you see the Hope for Haiti benefit? I watch a lot of TV, it's my job. That's what I tell people, it's my job. But if you did notice it, what I thought was interesting is you had all these actors, you had Tom Hanks and Brad Pitt, and they're all coming out one after the other, and they're all shielding themselves. And then there are two people who were not. One was former President Clinton, who's deeply gifted at standing in neutral. You'll notice it now. He can take applause for about 15 minutes, and he doesn't fidget. It's really astonishing. And then Denzel Washington, because he's Denzel Washington and he's hot. Let's just face that. So done, right? But then what was so interesting is the next morning I watched all the roundup of the Hope for Haiti benefit. Again, it's my job. But the two clips they used over and over were former President Clinton and Denzel Washington. It's just so much more interesting to see. The other thing to think about, you'll notice tonight, I very particularly walked on from here. If you are ever speaking in front of a group, okay, because we read from left to right, right? So when someone walks up from here, this is your natural, but rhythm. You're used to looking this way for things to happen. When speakers walk on from this side, just to see how you feel that, you just don't like me as much because you feel snuck up on. It's a really small thing. But until it's not, because you want everybody to like you as much as possible. If you have a screen, as we do, you want to, again, this podium's in the exact right spot, because you want to have the audience look at you and then look at your slide, should you choose to use a slide, all right? Again, you're in there already in their, the loop that they're used to looking at. Again, when the podium is over here, we'll just do an imaginary podium. And then I'm talking, and now I'm making you work too hard. So if you have a conference room, you want to rearrange that immediately. Just because it's fun to know, the exact opposite is true for TV. We trust what's on the right-hand side of the screen. We don't trust what's on the left. That's why all the talk show hosts sit on the right. Oprah's on the right, Letterman's on the right, Leno's on the right. Everybody's over there for a reason. Whenever they do a compare-contrast, the product they want you to buy at the end of the commercial, the bright white sock, is going to be on the right-hand side of that screen, I promise you. We just like things better when they're over there. So, yes, all of these things begin to matter. Do any of you stand up in front of a group and speak like this? Ever? Sometimes, maybe? Yes. All right. So let's consider that for a minute, because I see a lot of people who need to think about it. So you're waiting on the correct side, and then you see people whose names get called, and they go, no, don't do that, right? No, because now everybody in the audience is tense for you, right? So you're like, yay, my name's been called. You saw me tonight. I'm like, yay, yay for me. Like, even if you suck, I want you to be like, yay, here I go. All right, I do, and you do, and you do, and you talk, and you be. And then at the end, you'll see a lot of people who weren't that bad. Like, you didn't think they were that bad, but for whatever reason, they're upset. Like, I forgot bullet point 3 on slide 5. And then they finish, and they go, you've all seen that exit, and it's so disheartening to me, because you're like, I didn't think they were that bad, but they look so unhappy. So I really need you to be like, yay, gloat back to your seat. All right, you're still presenting from the time till you sit down. If you travel to another office to present, you're presenting from in this town, at least 3 blocks away. You don't know who's in the Starbucks with you. You do not know. You've got to be super careful. I recently. I had to go to a speaking engagement in California, and I'm always talking about how you're presenting from the time you leave your house. But I was standing in Kennedy, and I started talking to the guy next to me, waiting to get on the plane. And it turned out not only was he was going to the conference at which I was speaking. So, hi, I'm presenting in Kennedy Airport now. And then he sat next to me on the plane. 6 hours. And I was like, what TV can I watch right now? I can't watch The Housewives for 6 hours. I'm going to look like an idiot. Right? So I went with Animal Planet, because I thought Animal Planet's like, I won't seem dumb, but I can, I can do 6 hours of Animal. I can't do 6 hours of CNN. So, but it was just, you really do have to be careful. And again, when you're leaving, same thing. I talk a lot about, and it seems incredibly pedantic. Before any big meeting, pick 3 small talk topics, because you can go sit down in a restaurant and wait for the waiter to bring the menu and just pick some random topic and blow, then that's it. You've just blown the whole lunch and you haven't even gotten your order in. Or you leave, you have a great meeting and you're standing by the elevator and it gets a little awkward and you just pick some random topic and then the whole thing blows up in your face. So I want all that to be done ahead of time. Again, it seems really, people tend to, they get nervous and they make a joke about oh, do you ever go to that dump, whatever, the dump deli downstairs? And not realizing that the person they're talking to like goes there every morning, whatever it might be. It just, all of these different kinds of, it seems small. I really, in that moment, I tend to pick, as crazy as it sounds, you can't go wrong with the weather, right? Have you been on any trips recently? Like all of these kinds of things, just small, just something, a couple of go-to topics. Because it's so easy to just have, as I said, just, and you can feel it happen, like all the airs, and you have no idea what you just said that ruined it. So, seemingly innocuous remarks. My brother's still trying to figure out what he said once in Asia that offended people just to the point that they refused to meet with him for the remaining 3 days he was there. He's been over it in his mind. He's talked to me about it. We can't figure out what he said. It was very strange. Anyway, so I want those things to be clear. So any of the questions about 7, 38, 55 before I go on? We're just talking straight physicality. Yes, please.
What do you think is the reason that you reverse the order on TV? Do we think it's a mirror and we automatically flip it in our mind?
I mean, again, it just comes back to, it's that very cellular, the left-hand side is sinister. And we still always see things that way. That's why the lead story in the newspaper is always the top right. We're at the end of the day, we're very primitive. I mean, with all of our gadgets and our yak, we're not. We need to see your hands. We like things that are on the right-hand side. We need to cover ourselves in public. None of these things isn't a natural.
The reading left to right thing.
Yeah, that's a biofeedback loop.
Totally
Yeah.
get that, but the TV thing is.
Yeah, no, it's true. It's strange, right?
Understand why.
Yes.
It's so much of your presentation and your success or failure in a meeting deals with how your physicality.
Mm-hmm.
So much business is done via conference calls,
Right.
Where they're only hearing your words.
Right.
How do you handle that?
I want you to stand whenever you do a conference call. Again, standing automatically gives your voice more. And if you have a whole bunch of people in a room, I want everybody standing. I take all the chairs away. I go in a lot.
Makes for a short meeting also.
It does. But I go in a lot to coach people who are, they've got these big calls where a deal is riding on it. Nobody gets to sit down. And then I'm in the back of the room like a crazy person going like, I need more from you. Happy. We're happy. Right? This is me. If you're alone and you don't have people to give you that feedback, I recommend looking in the mirror. Because you automatically are going to entertain yourself. You just will. You will. You can't look at yourself in the mirror and just be like, blah, blah, blah. You don't. You smile at yourself and you're so funny. You do, I promise you. I do a lot of teleconferences. No, but I know it seems like you're super narcissistic, but you're not. I do teleconferences, where I have 40 or 50 people on a call and they're all on mute. And boy, is that boring. I'm getting no feedback. So I'm looking in a mirror and I am cracking myself up because you've got to do, so yes, I highly recommend. I was working recently with a recording artist. She had a new album out. And you do the same interview 14 times. Tell me about the album. Try and sound excited about that conversation. So I just put her in front of her mirror in her hotel and I was like, go, amuse yourself. So yes, the mirror is your savior there. Any other questions about these things? Yes, no, maybe? What would we most like to talk about? We could talk PowerPoint presentations. We could talk hostile question and answer. We could talk both. Yes?
Do you think it's appropriate to call a meeting and expect your staff or anybody not to bring their BlackBerries along to the meeting? Because
I would.
what inevitably happens is that you'll find somebody around the big conference table who's sitting there on their BlackBerry.
I think if it's your meeting, you can absolutely say no BlackBerries. The point is you're going to be out of there in half the time if you don't have 14 people under the table. So I think, yeah, if it's your meeting, then, I mean, I don't allow BlackBerries when I'm coaching. That's gone over really well a couple of times. But
I mean, even in presentations, I see salesmen presentation or their
Right.
agendas and recaps, and it's like, leave the Blackberries at the desk.
Right.
Even if your buyer's sitting there with her Blackberry in hand, leave
Right.
the Blackberry.
Yes, you need to give people your undivided attention. And again, from 2 blocks away, wherever you go, if you're going into a meeting. Because that's the other thing that makes me crazy. People will finish lunch, and then, they're waiting to crack the code on some, international crisis. They've got to get their BlackBerry out while the bill is being paid, or while they're walking to the door to get their coat. Seriously, you can't just finish, give your goodbyes the same attention you gave your hellos. And then, you know what, a block away, you can look at your BlackBerry. I'm sure it's all going to be fine. I really do. It makes me nuts. But it's hard. If it's not your meeting, then it's hard to enforce that kind of thing. But one of the reasons that I don't use slides, is because once you got slides up there, everybody checks out. The room is dark. I can check my BlackBerry. Nobody can see. No, I mean, and for me, truly, if there's a reason, if there's a visual that needs to go up there because I can't make it understood by having it come out of my mouth, I promise you the day that happens, I will have a slide for it. But my feeling is people are smart. If I say something interesting, they can write it down. And they've been reading for a really long time. So they don't need to be read to. So yes, I don't tend to use slides. If you do have them, Guy Kawasaki, who bills himself as the chief evangelist for Mac, has what he calls the 10-20-30 rule, which is you shouldn't have more than 10 slides. You shouldn't speak for longer than 20 minutes. And if anything on your slide is written in smaller than 30-point type, you have too many words on the slide. And I think that is a good rule of thumb, that I'm completely comfortable with that one. The other thing that I like people to know about is what's known as the rule of 3, which is we can only remember 3 things, and at point 4 we stop listening, right? And this is why it's 3 stooges and 3 bears and 3 little pigs and 3 musketeers and 3 blind mice. You think I'm joking? No, it's all done for a reason. And there are 3 wishes in every fairy story. It never like that genie comes out and says, you get 4. You can't. Your brain shuts down. So I want 3 bullet points on a slide. I'm going to make the following 3 points in my speech. I want you to remember these 3 things. No more. Bye-bye. Yeah, 3 is good. What did I do with my water? I was wandering around. Oh, there it is. There it is. That's just so you know, and it's one of the things I talk a lot about. If you can't fix it, feature it. I talk about 2 things. And make it everybody's problem, all right? If something happens, like you lose your water, I wasn't going to stand up here and be thirsty and then try and figure out where it was and keep talking to you. I can't do 2 things at once. I'd love to think I can, but I can't. So, hey, I'm going to make it everybody's problem. What have I done with it? If you spill the water across the conference room table, as I have done in a meeting once, it was actually an important meeting, and I've soaked about 3 people down. Don't pretend it didn't happen. Right? Everybody does that. They just pretend. No, stop. Deal with it. Apologize once. That's the other tricky bit. Because the other thing is then people get into the over-apologizing. And, I'm so sorry. Let me just say again how sorry I am. And then they leave again. I just want to say one more time. Don't. Shh, be quiet. One time. I had a client once whose podium collapsed in the middle of one of his speeches. And I said to him, what did you do? And he said, I tried to pretend it wasn't happening. I was like, seriously, have you learned nothing from me and all the time we've worked together? I would have made hay out of a collapsing podium. So yes, but I do, you can have things be big, it's fine. Any questions about any other things? Yes?
If your rule of saying you're sorry is only once, is that the same rule for saying thank you?
Oh no, I'm having to thank you. But that said, what I don't ever want and what makes me want to hang myself is when people get up again. You get up in front of your crowd of people and they go, oh, I want to thank so-and-so for having me here tonight. I want to thank so-and-so and I want to thank that. Really? This is the first impact that you have. And you're going to waste it on a bunch of white noise with the thank you and the thank you with a whole bunch of people that nobody in the audience knows who they are? No. It's a wasted opportunity. Winston Churchill said opening amenities or opening inanities. Okay? I like it. So it's great if you want to thank people at the end of your talk. Thank you for listening. But I never thank people at the beginning. What I want you to begin any presentation with a fact. I mean, you see I did it tonight. There's a statistic, 7:30, 8:55. Boom, we're in, we're going. Or you can tell a story, you can ask a question, something to get people engaged. The more you can make it a participatory experience, the more people are going to like it. But then I'm heavy into thank you every other way. I do thank you emails and thank you snail mail. No, I think thank you notes are highly underrated. I'm a big believer in a thank you note. So, particularly for referrals. Anytime anybody refers me to somebody else, I promptly write the person who referred me a big fat thank you. Because you know what that's going to do when they get the thank you? They're going to refer me again. They just are. So yes, I love that. Yes.
When I'm in meetings or presenting, I'm dealing with product.
Mm-hmm.
So, what is the best way to keep them sort of engaged?
Let them play with it.
Okay.
Seriously, because again, you'll notice it on morning TV. This makes me crazy. When someone's doing a segment and they don't touch the product, and you'll see it now. And so the host and the guest are left, either the camera person is dealing with shooting them, talking about something that is not on the television screen, or they're shooting something that no one is touching. I'm insane. I'm throwing things on my TV. So no, seriously, I want you to pick it up. I want you to touch it. I want you to talk about what the experience is of. If everybody can't touch it, be like, you'd be surprised how light this glass is. And it's incredibly refreshing, and the water's still cold. And, all of these things, you've got to be. But the more you can pass it around and let people play with stuff. I work with the sugar lobby, as you do. And so, there's this whole high fructose corn syrup, sugar situation. We've seen the war going on TV, right? So they had their sad presentation about HFCS, high fructose corn syrup. And they're like, there's products with 30%. I was like, let's go to the supermarket. So we did. And we got all this stuff with HFCS in it. Just all this junk that you think is healthy, if it's just riddled with freaky corn syrup. And we loaded the entire conference room table. And everybody came in, and they started touching it and played. They're like, but my wife makes me eat this because she says it's healthy. Now we're in a conversation, and everybody's engaged. So yes.
So you're saying that even when they're touching, they're more engaged?
They're so much more engaged with you because, and then also the thing is, then they're asking about the questions that are pertinent to them. Again, everybody's the hero of their own story. They don't care about your pitch. They care about you making their life better. So if they touch it and then it brings up something that they need to question, whereas if you're just doing your whole yik yik yak, and that's one of the reasons I keep stopping for questions. A, it keeps the audience more alive, but B, if your audience is listening to you and you've said something preposterous or something they find preposterous, they can't pay attention to you anymore until they've asked you a question about it. So again, I'm really comfortable with people challenging me and coming at me and talking at me while I'm speaking. But if you can do it, I like to make things as interactive as possible. Just short of trust games, because everybody hates trust games, right?
You said, I'm sorry, they don't care about my pitch.
They care about how it's going to make their life better. Your pitch is only this interesting to them. Mm-hmm. How what you're pitching is going to make their day better is like this interesting. Yeah.
Would you say that applies a lot to marketing a product
Yeah.
to consumers?
Mm-hmm.
Because I find that a lot of clients, a lot of manufacturers who are extremely brilliant and innovative and very techy
Mm-hmm.
are so wrapped up in their own brilliance,
Right.
in their own innovation, that when it comes to communicating the benefits of the product to the consumer, they miss the boat and they don't market emotion,
Yeah.
which I feel is very important in what you just
Yeah.
said about how does this product make your life
Better.
better.
If that's the only thing, again, and it's whether you're selling a product or you're selling yourself. How are you going to make, again, it's your egg. It's where what you're selling interacts with their life. So that's how you're going to make their life better.
And as an agency, regardless of what type of agency you are, whether you're advertising, social media, or PR, I think a great challenge is being able to win the trust of the client and overcome their sort of tunnel vision
Right.
in terms of the messaging that they're trying to put forth.
Yeah.
And I like what you just said about buying all the products and putting them on a table, because
Yeah.
I find that I do that a lot with clients. I go to extremes to visualize, to make it visual as I'm speaking to them.
Yeah.
And so do you think that, I find it very frustrating because not every client is open to letting you give them counsel. They expect counsel, but they're really looking to dictate to you.
Absolutely. This is what you need to explain to them. Not everybody would be comfortable with this approach, but you're so visionary that I really feel like I can talk to you about this. See, people love to be told they're visionary. Love it.
There's that thin line between kissing someone's ass
Yeah.
and
Oh no, you have to give them the because. No, but you have to give them the because. I think I can tell you this because you are the visionary behind X idea. And not everybody would be as willing to go out on a limb as you have been. But no, you have to have done your background research in an extraordinary way. And that's before any meeting. I do an absurd and shocking amount of research on people before I meet with them. And half the time it never comes up, but it informs how I present things. So there was one other question, yes, no, maybe? No, okay. Yes? So, I mean, in terms of the other things that come up day to day, do you have trouble with? You mentioned people on BlackBerrys under the table. One of the other things I speak quite a bit about is the art of interrupting, both how to handle being interrupted and how to interrupt others. Both are fun. So, very often, we have trouble with people interrupting us. And what I like to do there is, so much of how you handle it depends on your tonal quality. And in those moments, what I need you to do, and this is when you're being interrupted, this is when you're giving people news that they might not necessarily want to hear, you want to channel what I call your inner New York restaurant hostess, right? And she's the one who comes over to you and she's like, oh, your table's going to be another half an hour? Right, and she looks so happy about it that you're just like, all right, and you just go into the bar and sit down and mind your own business. So, when I need to interrupt someone else, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to interrupt you. I look really happy, and they're kind of like, oh. And notice the phrasing there is very particular. It's not "may I interrupt you," right? You're not asking permission. It's now happening. I'm going to interrupt you. Big smile. Your table's going to be another half an hour. And then da-da-da-da, and then just give it back to them at the end. If someone interrupts you, I think what you need to do is, you're staying upbeat. Hang on, I wasn't quite finished. I know what you're going to say is important, but I'd just like to finish my thought. So you acknowledge the deep and profound importance of whatever's about to be land on you, right? And I really want to hear it, but let me just think. So that kind of thing. And again, both of those are all going to come down to your tone. Yes?
One of my biggest problems is international travel.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been to Central America, Eastern Europe, China, Malaysia. And when I'm communicating through a translator, there's a 5-minute conversation between the two people going back and forth, and I get a one-word answer when they're translating.
Right.
And as much as I try to pleasantly, interrupt them to, get more to the point or get more information,
Right.
I just have had no success.
Well, they're probably talking about where they want to have lunch. I mean, I'm serious, like half the time, that's 90% of the conversation. Do you want to go down that? I don't know. But I think that you always want to take the onus on yourself and say, I'm sure, that it's, not as much fun to translate everything word for me, but just so that I can be sure that I understand exactly what's happening, because I want to be able to help you as best I can. So, it's all about, you're just that kind of that slow-witted American who needs everything spelled out for them, but because I want to be able to help you as best as I can. And that's the same, anytime, a lot of people are worried about someone asking them a question that they don't know the answer to. And I think it's completely okay to say, let me think about that for a second, because I want to be able to be certain to give you the best answer possible. Right? Nobody gets mad because you want to give the best answer possible. So that's your way out of that one. Yes.
Speaking of getting mad, you had mentioned preparing clients for hostile interviews.
Yes.
And one spin that I kind of see to that is, as a company or as a salesperson that's either cold calling a prospect or interviewing with a potential client for a service, how do you deal with someone who's the show me what you got personality, who may have a certain strident tone to their speaking voice, are giving you the third degree, and may be trying to put you on the defensive, whether they're aware of it or they're not?
Right.
And how can you be proactive in addressing that person's concerns while not losing your cool?
Right. I think there are two magic phrases, and this, again, this is going to be in any situation. Tell me more. Tell me more. What I let people run it out. Run out the clock on all the reasons why you think what I'm doing is stupid, and you think I'm stupid, and what I just said is stupid, and you just keep talking. And eventually they stop. So tell me more is very helpful. And my other magic phrase is, let me think about that. It commits you to nothing, but it seems really thoughtful, right? So, but when I get a lot of pushback. Because very often I'm hired to work with someone who does not wish to work with me, and they've been told this is what's going to be happening to them, and then I walk in, and then it's the double whammy. It's a little bit easier now that I'm older, but I started this company 15 years ago, and then it was like, ugh, what's a little blonde girl going to teach me? So then they had to tell me all the reasons why, again, all the other media trainers had been bad, and media training is stupid, and why do they need it, and blah, 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 blah. And I just let them talk, and I'm like, tell me more. Let me think about that. Tell me, blah, 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 blah. And then eventually, okay. And then we get started. But they need to say all the stuff they want to say first. So fine, barf it out all over me. And you just keep an inquiring expression and nod. And you look interested. You have to go to that very therapy place.
Does that apply to a phone conversation as well?
Yeah. I let them run out the clock. Because you think, after people can't hear you until they've told you all the things they need to say, and then they can finally start to let you in a little bit. So, yeah.
The emotions are brought down. They don't hear what you say.
Yeah,
If you don't bring them to neutral,
yeah.
what you say is not going to be heard. You might as well not.
And usually, if they do end up saying things that are incredibly horrible, right after it comes out of their mouth, they realize it, and then they feel a little bit bad. And then they will listen to you because they're trying to make up for having said something completely hideous. It's true. But one of the other things I want people to know, if someone does say something really hideous to you, very often our instinct, and it's more with women than with men, we tend to like make a joke of it or try and help them out rather than like. So what I really want you to do, but the magic phrase for that one is, I'm not quite sure what you're saying, which forces them to repeat it. And usually they won't repeat it. They'll go like, I was just joking. All right, I was just joking is just code for, I'm waiting to see how offended you might be. My other new favorite one is, right, have you ever noticed recently it's a new verbal tick, the nationwide verbal tick, right after people say something incredibly horrible or that they know they should not have said, they'll say blah, 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 blah. I'm just saying. Have you noticed? All the time people are doing it. Like that somehow makes it better. It's replaced my bad is the new thing that everybody's using. I'm just saying. Kids do that. Any other questions about any of these things? Yes, no, maybe? Hostile Q&A. One of the things I like people to know is you never again, for the rest of your life, I hope, have a problem or and this is my least favorite word, crisis, right? You just don't have it. It's not done. The White House has a situation room. you also have a situation. So for the rest of your life, you either have a situation or a dilemma, but you never have a crisis or a problem, ever. Because you know those emails that you get where someone says, crisis, all caps. That doesn't help me, right? That doesn't improve my ability to think clearly. And the other thing is usually, like, is it as much of a crisis for me as it is for you? I don't think so. So now I just think you're kind of like irritating. Or the all caps, urgent. Don't do that. You know? I have a whole list of email headings in the book, the ones I never want to see again. Urgent is one, crisis is one, is for when you get in on Monday. Oh, hello. I wasn't aware you were dictating my Monday morning. I know you're out sick, but I'm out sick. Yes. That's why I'm not answering you. So all of these things, again, we haven't even opened the email and we're angry. So you really have to be super careful with these.
How about the word issue? I often say I have an issue as opposed to problem or.
Yeah.
Are you okay with issue? Or should I go with situation or dilemma?
There seems to be an issue. Yeah, I'm okay with issue. Have you noticed the MTA has an incident? There's been an incident on the 6th line, right? It's not like, oh my God, someone stabbed someone. There's been an incident. So issue is okay.
Just making sure.
Yes.
Can we go back to, you mentioned my bad, and
Right.
these expressions
Right.
everyone uses today. One I can't stand is when people say no worries.
Ugh.
For some reason, it just like makes my hair stand up.
Yeah.
And a couple of people that work with me use that expression to make sure they weren't here. Is there something that you could do in the course of conversation to try to move them away from
Well,
that
what I would say to
language?
them is no worries is like no problem. Why are we talking about worries and problems? Is anybody excited about hearing the word worry or problem? They're not. So I would just make that point. So just, you're welcome, or my pleasure. Welcome and pleasure are nice and happy words. Where I would outlaw both of those phrases. I actually was I was at a business recently, it's a hotel, and they have taped to the phone cradle, my pleasure. So just to remind people, rather than no problem, we just finished solving a problem. Really? You want to bring that one up?
Well, no worries is also very geographic and regional. Like, I never heard anyone use that phrase until I worked for a New Zealand-based company. In Australia and New Zealand, they would never say, oh, it's okay. Oh, it's okay, no problem. They would just say, no worries.
Yeah.
People
No
say it
worries.
here a
But
lot
I do
now.
hear it, and I say it.
And it just
I definitely say it.
drives me.
That's so.
Well, again, I think it's just bringing the word. Well, yeah, but bringing the word. The way I would frame it for people is why bring up the word worry or problem, and I would put it under that umbrella. We're getting rid of both phrases.
Is no worries something that came from the younger generation?
I
Is that slang that's coming from like
I think. I mean, is it?
20s?
Are they young kids regional?
No, because I always thought that and my bad were slang phrases that started by young people, and that it just sort of graduated and seeped out into the general conversation because everyone has an urge to feel young, so they latch on to a term.
Yeah, there are those. I think my bad is definitely something that we can blame. We can blame on the young people.
In a professional business environment. So I guess I'm lucky. I received my bad.
My fault.
I have heard things that would make your hair stand on end. And if I weren't on tape, I would happily say them.
And you know the other, I do have a question.
Yes,
and that
please.
is, if you have a colleague that always writes to you with capital letters,
Yeah, don't do
the
that.
time it takes them to stop what they're doing and frame it with a capital letter and then go back to small text, you'd have to say, don't they get that it is just so objectionable and annoying?
Yeah.
And when people receive it, they get angry.
Yeah, all caps is essentially the written version.
Change.
The written version of you're screaming at me.
I
Yeah.
will say one thing and that is when I answered an email, I went down below and changed all the caps back to small letters. Because you can do that when you respond.
I had someone that used all caps, and it was actually, they just left their thing in all caps, and they didn't realize, and I sent them a single email saying, do you realize that all caps is the same as stringing?
Right.
taught me that years ago, because I didn't know when you first started.
Yeah.
And they said, oh, I'm so sorry.
Right.
They didn't do it.
No, this is where they would write to you, and then when they wanted to make a point about something,
Oh,
they
they
would
put
put
it all.
that part in capital letters.
To focus you.
To focus you, like you might not have been able to read the entire sentence and capture that thought. So it's difficult because you don't really know what to say, and you have to pick your fights carefully.
Yes.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I did feel better being able to respond and erasing all the capitals when I did something.
The caps are tougher. I mean, and I'm also not a fan of an emoticon. Really?
Say that again?
I don't want to see a smiley face. Don't do that for me. I'm not a smiley face. You know, I'm not 14. You're not 14. I don't understand why we're using these. They bum me out so desperately.
Yeah, sometimes I love that. It's an interpersonal connection. But in business, I don't use
In
it.
business, you can't. You
But
just
if you're
can't.
communicating with friends and you want to make a point, you have an explanation point for it, you can put a smile on it. That's fine. For me.
For you.
Remember the rose? They said
Oh.
smiles.
But again, all of these, again, one of the reasons I wrote The Wow Factor is because, you know, everybody at this point and at our ages, we all essentially have the same skill sets, experience. So it's the razor's edge of what little thing you might do that's going to give somebody else a rash. You know, they're just like, I can't work with so and so. And you know, I mean, literally, I talked to one of my clients, had to lay off someone from their division, and it came down to who left dirty dishes in the communal kitchen. That was who got the chop, because that was the only divider between the three people that were up on, you know, on the chopping block. And that's how small, that's how scary it is right now. So yes.
There seems to be a new thing now with emails that everyone writes NTD and resends it. Noted is what it stands for. Like if you send somebody an informational email, they write note NTD and resend it back to you. Drives me crazy.
Yeah,
Why?
I
You should assume that they read the email you sent them.
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
You know-
I don't.
Why is it necessary to send noted back?
I mean, unless they're trying to leave a paper trail, I really
That's a
don't
big
know.
part of this. I mean,
I think a lot of times people
the
are.
inundation of email today it's enormous. I mean,
Yeah,
so there are times where I think you want to make sure that they know that you saw it.
yeah.
It's a pain in the ass because one more email you don't want it to have.
Right. I think. I mean, again, I think it might just be somebody leaving a paper trail for themselves. I agree.
Seems to be really growing a lot lately.
Oh, I haven't had it happen, but now I'm looking forward to it. I am. I love when I start to get stuff like, because then I can write a little blog post about it. My favorite thing.
Wow of the week.
The wow of the week.
We like your blogs.
Thank you. Yes. Okay, so really quickly, I just know what time it is because I don't have a watch on. I know that I want to be 7. So I'm going to start wrapping up because it's been a while, and I certainly have spoken longer than my 20 minutes. But so speaking of blog posts, yes, the book is here, and you got that. And then I do have a blog, and there's a wow of the week. It doesn't come every week. It comes usually every 2 weeks, and it's literally just whatever I happen to be. It's come up for me with clients that's interesting that I feel like everybody should know immediately. And so I send that out. You can sign up for that on the blog, and but I do post every week. I've been doing going through a post Emily post phase where I'm writing about etiquette things that are making me insane. Just the oversharing of personal information. I just told the story of a client I met recently, and he walked into the restaurant. He's like, "Oh, I'm so sorry, I'm late." He's only in town for 2 days. He goes, I didn't bring enough underwear, and I had to go get some. Hello. You could have just stopped after "I'm so sorry, I'm late." Like, really, I did not need to know that. So, yes, the title of that post was "Sharing Isn't Caring." But and I had a
short story you didn't want to hear.
yeah, and so I listed a bunch of other incidents like that. But so, yes, if you can sign up, that would be great. I would love it. I hope you enjoy the book. I have a questions button on my website and on the blog. Any question you have, if you think of something later, it rolls directly to my BlackBerry. I write everybody back. And because this is just my idea of fun. Thank you.
Thank you.